Joining me now is Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Senator, thank you for joining me tonight. Tomorrow, Senator, millions of Americans will see their food benefits cut. How can you explain that to viewers?
Well, you know, I find it interesting that our Republican friends talk about the dignity of work. Well, I agree with that. And that's why in this country we need to create millions and millions of decent paying jobs. Unfortunately, Al, virtually every effort that we have made to rebuild the infrastructure, create jobs through energy efficiency, create a veterans jobs bill, every one of those efforts to create jobs has been beaten back and filibustered by the Republicans. Meanwhile, what's happening in America economically is the middle class continues to shrink. More and more people are becoming low income. We have 46.5 million Americans today living in poverty, more than any time in history. We have 22% of our kids living in poverty, the highest rate of poverty in the industrialized world. So what these guys are doing are really going to war against seniors, against the kids, against working families who are trying to get by on $9–10 an hour, who just can't feed their families. Meanwhile, these very same guys fighting against jobs programs, wanting to give more tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. It is totally obscene.
But, you know, Senator, the food stamp cuts that will hit tomorrow will slash about $5 billion from the program. Now, that's less than the $6.9 billion we spent in fighter jet contracts just this year alone. And get this, it's a fighter jet program that the Pentagon doesn't even want. Why don't they cut it from there?
Oh, gee, well, Al, I guess the answer has something to do with poor people and working people do not make large campaign contributions. Military industrial contractors do. Billionaires do. The fact of the matter is that not only are we going to look at a major cut in food stamps tomorrow, as you well know, the Republican bill, farm bill, passed in the House, calls for another $40 billion in cuts over the next 10 years.
Correct.
So these guys, at a time when many of our kids are facing real challenges getting the food they need, the nutrition they need, these guys are going to war against the kids. They want more and more for the military and more tax breaks for the rich. That is incredible.
You know, Republicans have also been against raising the minimum wage. But that's barely enough to get by. I mean, do the math. Salary for a full-time minimum wage worker is just $15,000 a year. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is more than $13,000. How are people supposed to afford things like food and clothes, Senator?
Al, let me just tell you, I mean, you're absolutely right, but let me tell your viewers something. It is not just the Republicans are fighting our effort to raise the minimum wage. Many of them want to abolish the concept of the minimum wage. They think, this is true, that $7.25 an hour is too much. And that if you're in a high unemployment area, Detroit or someplace else, and an employer offers somebody $4 an hour or $3 an hour, that's freedom, Al. That's getting the government off the backs of employers and workers, and we can have people working for $3 or $4 an hour. So what you're looking at is a real class warfare going on here, a real tax against the working class, low-income people to benefit the wealthy and multinational corporations.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you for your time this evening. And